like this. And there's ancient Buddhist similes or metaphors that can be really rich in meaning, and I think their intention is to be a message to tell us like what it's like, and there are different examples. So I think it's also interesting to discover for ourselves, which is often said invitation from the historic Buddha to discover for ourselves, like what is it like? What is mindfulness like? What is practice like? But I chose kind of there's kind of a narrow, like mindfulness within that scope. And yeah, so I think it's the inspiration and the aspiration is to guide us to cultivate greater awareness, to have more mental clarity, to have deeper practice. Like, if we could ask, I mean, obviously there's these incredible lineages and many traditions where there are teachers we could ask questions, but it's nice that there are some writings from oral tradition that have been passed down for thousands of years that give us a little hint. So oftentimes these were described as images rather than explanations. And so I thought I would share a few that I find interesting. I am interested to know like what mindfulness is like for you, but I'll open up to that in a minute. There's some of the references I have are one from the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, so it's in the Theravada tradition that I'm primarily focused on, and also there are two other fundamental instructions on meditation. So the Four Foundations of Mindfulness were very classic, well-known by many as instructions for how to cultivate mindfulness. But there's two other really well-known ones. Maybe the other is called in English, Mindfulness of Breathing, or Anapanasati Sutta. There's 16 steps. And there's a third one that seems to be less well-known called Mindfulness of the Body. And its instructions also on cultivating mindfulness, but it's quite specifically about the body. And so there's a few examples I could share from that, from recollection. And in there's maybe a little background, this idea that during the time that the historic Buddha was practicing for his full enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, as legend goes, he was taunted by this kind of demon creature person called Mara. And so Mara would taunt him because his intention was to find this enlightenment, this grand enlightenment. And so Mara was there the whole time, tempting, and I think in my life, and I know other people have discussions with, that Mara can be more like a practical symbol for those temptations or everyday obstacles that might get in the way of our own meditation or our own well-being. Could be like a habit that it's like, oh, I see you, habit, or I see you, Mara. It's kind of like something that we want to overcome or not fall into. So just as a little background who Mara is, and I did want to bring it into the present, also how I view this idea that there is some kind of something to tempt craving or to tempt ill will, something that drives behaviors that maybe aren't so ethical feeling or healthy feeling. So anyway, getting back to it's like this. In the mindfulness of the body teaching, the Buddha gave a whole list of examples of what it's like. It's like this. This is what it's like to have mindfulness. And specifically, where mindfulness is filled into the body, so that the whole body has this mindful awareness. It's not just a mental thing, it's this deep knowing of all of the senses as well as the mind, the thinking mind. This is something that is cultivated quite a bit in the Four Foundations of Mindfulness and the Anapanasati Sutta and Mindfulness of the Body, and also for people who do yoga, just yoga, whether you do some classical yoga or everyday yoga at a gym, this idea of bringing awareness to the body. It could be something you do with mindful eating or mindful walking, mindful showering, to be aware that we have 5 senses plus the thinking mind, and how there can be a wholeness when they all come together. If we're, as I asked earlier, if we're, how many people go inside their heads with ruminated thinking? This is kind of like a fractured, a lack of wholeness, that we're just in our head as opposed to really connecting with the body. And certainly, so interesting, it seems like it would just be an issue in the 21st century, because now we have cell phones, we all grew up with television. We all grew up with telephones, but this revolution of having our heads kind of in computers and connected to the internet. But this goes back, thousands of years ago, recorded that people were lost in their thought, deep in their head. And to have these practices to cultivate embodied awareness, where the incredible intelligence of the body, and it could be the signals of, oh, this is pleasant or this is unpleasant. Oh, I feel like walking down the street, I feel a little bit hot. And somehow we automatically find ourselves going into the shade without even thinking. It's this body awareness, this body knowledge. When we feel a little bit hungry, we seek food. If we feel the urge to go to the restroom, we take care of ourselves. Sometimes it doesn't seem as obvious that this is a language of our body, and there's so much more to being aware with our body than just being in our heads. And so an example of mindfulness of the body, one is of a giant, what is it like to be filled with mindfulness? And the example is like a big urn that's filled with water. And so I suppose it's like we would be like this big urn that's filled with water, such that if somebody were to come to fill it up, they couldn't fill it up because it's filled up already. And that when the urn is filled up, that Mara couldn't penetrate or couldn't enter because it was filled up with this fresh water. So this idea that we might feel filled with mindfulness, it's just a simile or a metaphor, that to be filled, so that in the mindfulness of the body, it was always kind of pointing towards, can this kind of craving or desire or obstacles kind of enter? And that mindfulness here becomes like a protector or a guardian. There's ethical components to this as well, to when we're filled with mindful awareness, when we're filled with compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, joy, that it would be hard for these tempting forces or ill will types of attitudes to penetrate. So another example is one of wood. That to be filled with mindfulness is like being a piece of wood that is, it's also a water metaphor, to be soaked. It's so saturated that the piece of wood is wet and soggy, so that it couldn't be caught on fire. And so that fire would be a fire of, again, it would be of Mara. So giving just these two examples for this idea of being saturated or filled, to have a complete sense of being aware, awake, present, and that we have the guarding of temptations, or aware of obstacles, aware of even some kind of harming type of behavior that we might do ourselves or to others or to our environment, so that we have this awake and aware quality. And so this might not resonate, with anybody else, but these were a couple examples from the mindfulness of the body. One that I also want to share it's from the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It's a little bit different in that it's an example of what it's like, and I find this one really very fascinating. What is it like to cultivate mindfulness? And so I have this, I thought I would read that, if I can. Right. All right, so this is the idea that we're in meditation, we're practicing, and this is right from the very, very beginning of the 4 foundations of mindfulness on mindfulness of the body. And how does one remain focused on the body in and of itself? Like this idea of being fully awake and aware, feeling our body, feeling our posture. And it goes on to say, there's the case where there's a meditator, a monk or a nun or a meditator, having gone into the wilderness to the shade of a tree or to an empty building, sits down folding his legs crosswise, holding his body erect and setting mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful, they breathe in, mindful, they breathe out. So as we breathe in long, or someone breathes in a long breath, we know that we're breathing in long, or breathing out long. We can discern, I know that I'm breathing out long. So there's this knowing and discerning. But then it goes on to say that we're going to be training ourselves. It's like, one, we train ourselves. So it's right away saying this is a training, that we're not perfect at it, that we're just really training. Training to be, to know that we're breathing in, to know that we're breathing out, to be sensitive to the entire body. And then the other part of this training is that we're breathing to calm the body. So this idea of taking a deep breath, knowing there's a deep breath, relaxing. So there is an intention to train, to be present, and to actually breathing out to calm the, it says literally, I will breathe out to calm the bodily fabrication. So there's an intention to relax, to be calm. Anybody be in a situation where if you're in a slight sense of anxiousness or even panic that you can't think clearly? Like if I lose my keys but I have to be here at 2:30 and I can see on my, on the GPS or whatever the maps program that I have 40 minutes or something, it's like I'm running around. But there could be a sense of like I can't think straight. So stop, take a breath, relaxing on the out breath. So in this tradition, this teaching is saying this is training, and we begin this training by connecting with just knowing that we're sitting. No big deal. It's not like some lofty thing. Knowing that we're breathing. We're going to do this training, and we're going to also begin with trying to calm ourselves a bit so we can be clear-minded. But it's just like this part. And this is attributed to the historic Buddha giving us this information. And before I read, I just want to say that this is about a woodworker. He's giving an example about woodworker. And the case, I didn't really know that he's referring to this woodworker as a turner. A turner is somebody who works on a lathe. Does everybody know what like a lathe is? Like, I guess it's like I took wood shop when I was younger. Not everybody may have. But it also could be compared to like a potter's wheel. Basically a craftsperson who is going to really focus on the spinning thing to do some carving or to make a pot. And so it goes on to say, just as a skilled turner, when making a long turn, discerns I'm making a long turn. Or when making a short turn, I'm making a short turn. In the same way, the meditator, when breathing in long, discerns, I'm breathing in long. Or breathing out long. And they discern, the meditator discerns, I'm breathing out long. And they train themselves. I will breathe in, calming the body formation. And one trains oneself, I will breathe out, calming the body formation. So the reason why I give this example is sometimes really checking in, like, what am I doing here? What is this practice for? And it can be, here's one example. It's a really simple example. And to me, it seems to be really just about concentration and focus. And the level of concentration and focus that's being provided is in the same way that a potter or a woodworker is really concentrating. So concentrating on the in-breath and the out-breath. That's just really maybe another way of putting it is like a full-hearted attention. Like a full-hearted, so it's focused, it is focused, kind of a mental focus, but it's also something that's being done with the whole body because the artisan is actually using their whole body to like move in and out to do like these short turns and long turns. So it's this union of the body and the mind in a full kind of harmonic marriage. That's the way I see it. So I just find it to be such a simple and, I guess, experience it for yourself. But, so it's like this. It's like a skilled turner when making a long turn or a short turn. Just like in the same way, to know that we're breathing in long or breathing out long, or breathing in short or breathing out short. And so it goes on to say that they remain focused internally on the body or externally on the body, or both internally or externally on the body. And then it goes on immediately after, also quite simple. Furthermore, when walking, a meditator discerns, I'm walking. That's pretty simple. But to discern it in a way like the way the artisan was really focused on the craft. And when standing, they discern, I'm standing. When sitting, he discerns, or one discerns, I'm sitting. I did change the pronouns, I just wanted to say. So I want to include everybody, and I'm sure that was the intention. When lying down, one discerns I'm lying down, or however their body is disposed. That's how they discern it. And in this way, they remain focused internally on the body or focused externally. So I think my intention for sharing this is maybe it demystifies like meditation or the grandiose, like if somebody has such grandiose intentions, there's simplicity to that we can bring mindfulness to our lives quite simply in so many ways by bringing a focused attention, a full-hearted attention, and which is a lot different than a half-hearted attention. So I know if I sit down to do a meditation where I'm half-hearted, it's a lot different than when I'm full-hearted. I like to share that word because full-hearted seems like a complete, here's my body, my heart, my mind. I'm really, without too much effort, relaxing and bringing full attention as best I can. And knowing full well, as a human being, that my mind is going to drift and I'm going to come back again and not feel disappointed, but to almost celebrate every time I come back. Oh, there's that knowing again. I know that I'm breathing. I know that I'm sitting. I know that I'm walking. I know that I'm lying down. I know that I'm brushing my teeth. I know that I'm in the shower. Just this knowing, and to be present.